Am I on? Okay. Hi, thanks for joining me. This is Monday, the 20th of September. This week, I'm going to spend some time with book 6 of the Walkerville Desires series, Renaissance. Um, and I've read from this book last month. This is the protagonist of the book is Paz Miyoshi. However, her mother Jerry has just I've just been really drawn to Jerry. I'm just very fond of her. Um, the Miyoshis, by the way, were the first Japanese Americans in Walkerville to own property, to own a farm. Um, uh, Back in the day, it was very difficult for non-white families to own property in Walkerville, and the Miyoshis were one of that family. So I'm going to do two readings tonight. The first one, uh, it's about Paz when she was about 9 years old, and she and her mother's sort of communication difficulties began around that time. Their problems began when Paz was 9. Their fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Baker, was very formal. She addressed all of her pupils as Mr. or, in Paz's case, Miss Miyoshi. She gave the class the assignment to draw a family tree. Mrs. Baker's instructions were very specific. She told each of her students that they had two parents, a mother and a father. The assignment was that they would trace their parents' lineage back at least 2 generations. If they were successful and traced them back further than that, they would be guaranteed an A+, which Paz really coveted. The four of them always ate silently. Okay, I just lost my place. Hang on just a second. Sorry about this. Okay. The four of them always ate silently. There was no asking to pass the salt. Nobody asked for seconds. Paz broke the silence by asking, "Who's my dad?" Her mother was peeling an apple. Usually Paz loved to watch Jerry carefully peel the apple in one long, continuous, curly shape. This time her demand brought an unexpected consequence. Jerry's paring knife slipped and her mother swore. She never swore. Jerry bled between her left thumb and index finger, in that place called the thenar web space. The partially peeled apple rolled off the kitchen table to be snatched up by Old Dog, a mutt who was deaf and blind, and apparently he could still smell. Grandma jumped up, exclaiming about bloodstains before rushing upstairs for the first aid kit. Both Paz and Gramps calmly continued to eat their Oreos and milk. Paz took this opportunity to dunk her cookie into the milk, something both her mother and Grandma frowned on. Gramps could do it, but not her. Grandma dragged Jerry over to the kitchen as she administered her and continued to berate her for cutting herself. Then she lowered her voice, whispering ferociously to Jerry, "For heaven's sake, tell her who her father is. Tell all of us." Jerry inspected her hand, then scowled at everyone in the kitchen and stalked off. She slammed her bedroom door shut. Paz went back 4 generations on her mother's side and still only got a B-. The 4 generations included her great-great-grandfather and mother, who had lived in an internment camp for several years during the Second World War. She never forgave her mother for ruining her perfect A average that year. Thus the campaign was born of necessity for Paz. Every 3 or 4 months at the dinner table she would ask her mother who her father was. Her mother noticed this pattern after 9 months of being asked. She became more irritated than usual at dinner. She sped through her meal, leaving before dessert was served, and she would sneak back down an hour later when Gramps, Grandma, and Paz were watching TV. Paz had been asking for over 18 months. The last time she asked, she was almost 11 years old. She never asked her mother again. She hardly ever spoke to her mother. Sitting in the same kitchen some years later, watching Jerry dunk Oreos into her too-sweet coffee, Paz asked, almost as a joke, "Who's my father?" Dropping the cookie in her mug, Jerry threw up her hands. "Really? Is this why you want to come home to harass me like this? What does it matter?" Taken aback, Paz matched her mother's sarcasm. "Yes, really. I deserve to know who this man is. He made me. It takes a man and a woman. You were the woman. He was the man. I want to know who he is." Jerry picked up her mess, put it in the sink, and announced, "Dinner at 6. Leftover spaghetti and meatballs tonight. You're welcome to stay as long as you want. Your room is ready," and left the kitchen, running up the stairs, not quite slamming, but very firmly closing her bedroom door. It was Jerry's way of telling her daughter, end of topic. Hiding in the safety of her room, Jerry sat at the window, inhaling the loamy earth just outside. This was her haven. Automatically, she called a number that was the first auto dial on her phone. He picked up immediately. "Jerry?" "She's here. She's been here for an hour and we've just had a fight." Her mother's muffled voice was soft and he strained to hear her. She could tell he'd been smoking. He was tapping a cigar. He sighed. "I'll call her tomorrow, invite her to lunch. Jeff's here." Nodding, then realized he couldn't see her, she replied, "Yeah, I heard. For good?" Disappointment wavered through the phone. "No, he's made it abundantly clear Walkerville is a hick town. He wants the bright lights and drama of London." Jerry chuckled. "Well, at least he's made up his mind." "Hey, kiddo, I had to hear from Jerry you're home," Bendigo chastised. She laughed. She felt good laughing. She missed him so much. "Oh, I would have gotten around to calling you, old man." Bendigo chuckled. "Hey, Jeff's in town. We're having lunch at CG's tomorrow at 1. Join us, okay? I know he'll want to see you, and I want to see you as well, Topaz." He was the only person who was permitted to call her by her real name. The same year she had the 2-generation family tree assignment was the same year she realized that Topaz was the stone for November, and she was born in May. When she asked her mother why she didn't name her May, Jerry looked at her with a peculiar glint. Wiping her hands on a faded pink tea towel, her mother hung it on the rack below the sink. She looked at her daughter and said simply, "Because you're Topaz, not May." And that's an excerpt from the beginning of the book. Paz has just returned to Walkerville after a 10-year absence. Lots of memories coming up for her. This second piece is it's basically after Bendigo dies. Her grandfather roamed into the kitchen. It was after 6. Petulantly, he said, "Where's Jerry? I'm starving." Paz had been doing some online baking and was unaware of the time and unaware that her mother was still upstairs. Paz was not a very good cook. Closing her laptop, she felt guilt-ridden. Oh, poor Gramps. After helping him get comfortable at his customary place at the kitchen table, she rooted around the fridge. Her mother was going to make a meatloaf, something she was not going to attempt. She saw cheese and bread, and going into the pantry, she grabbed a can of tomato soup. Cheerfully, she said to Gramps, "Hey, you know what? We're going to have a special dinner, sort of like lunch, only it's dinner time." Gramps smiled happily. "Okay." She made 2 sandwiches as she burned the first toasted cheese sandwich. She added milk to the soup and poured a coffee mug for her grandfather, who refused to drink it. "Bowl," he said succinctly. Sighing, she transferred the soup to a small bowl, and he greedily ate his meal. "Bed," he said after he was finished. Worried, she asked, "Do you need help?" Shaking his head, he replied, "Nope." He clumped up the stairs. She wondered how it was for her mother to be taking care of her grandfather, who was now, most of the time, like a young child, except for the times he didn't remember where he was or who he was. She looked around the kitchen. With what little cooking she had done, it looked like a hurricane hit it, and it still smelled of burning cheese. So she threw open the back kitchen door. Determined, she made another pot of tomato soup and another toasted cheese sandwich. This one looked almost perfect. Plating it, she carried a tray to her mother. "Knock, knock, dinner," she announced. After a few minutes, she heard her mother say, "Go away, not hungry." Paws grinned. Her mother sounded exactly like her grandfather. The house was an old Victorian that had seen better days. Most of the doors didn't latch properly. The thick, round cut doorknobs were loose on many of them. The brass plates hadn't been polished in many years, and all of the doors had skeleton keys sticking in the locks, either on the outside or the inside, depending on one's desire for privacy. Determined, Paws put the tray down. She said firmly, "I'm coming in. I have dinner for you." She listened for her mother to protest and was met with silence. She opened her mother's door, then retrieved the tray. It was fully dark and her mother was laying on the window seat. The open window was hung with worn white crocheted curtains that her grandmother had made years ago. These were swaying in the breeze, and she could hear her mother crumple paper, probably the letter she got. In the semi-darkness, Paws made out the vanity table and placed the tray on that. Quietly, she asked, "Do you want me to turn on a light?" "No, please no," Jerry pleaded. Walking to Jerry, Paws squatted. "Is there anything I can do for you, Mom?" After a few moments of silence, Jerry sounded almost normal. "No, I'm okay." "Paws, Bendigo loved you. You know that, right?" Paws smiled. "Oh, I know that, Mom. He's like my uncle or something." She saw tears well up in her mother's eyes. Paws asked, "He was a good friend to you, wasn't he?" Wordlessly, her mother nodded, biting down on her right index finger to keep from speaking. Paws sucked in the sight. She wasn't sure what to make of it. Hoping she sounded normal, Paws asked again, "Mom, is there anything I can do for you?" Jerry just shook her head. "No, I'm just tired. I just want to go to sleep." So that's the second reading. I'm going to talk about character development on Wednesday night, and I'm probably going to talk about Jerry. She's just a very interesting character. She holds her card's heart, close to her chest, and she describes herself as. She says that Japanese families like to have a spare kid so that that kid can stay home and take care of her and take care of the parents when they get old. And that has been her designated role. So we'll talk more about that. So thanks for joining me tonight. check below this video. Your YouTube counts everything, I've noticed. And it means a lot if you give us a thumbs up. And it's really helpful if you subscribe to my channel by clicking that big red button. If you have any questions or comments, there are links to my Facebook and Instagram and my email address. Remember that AC is archiving all of these. Check the playlists on my page. Plus, the direct link for Wednesday night's live stream is there too. Hope to see you then. And again, thank you for joining me. Good night.